Okay, so today we're gonna do a video on Aristotle's virtue ethics. And this is a introductory frame where I've already shot the video and I just wanna ease us into the lecture. This is gonna run about an average college class, okay? So when you go to college, your classes are gonna be an hour 15 if you went to my campus. And this is nothing that a college student doesn't do as a philosophy student in one of their classes. Granted that I believe this is a little denser, okay? So I'm just saying that this is very doable for anybody watching this. And I wanna go through a few things before we really get into it. Or it actually starts off pretty somber and then I start adding a bunch of layers to it, okay? So by the end of this, you're gonna have so many layers of Aristotle that you would want to filter out your own things that you hold on to, okay? And this is like a system of thought or a system of ethics. And this is something that you can hold on to, right? This system. And I give examples in this system of how things work with virtue ethics. And you should be able to replace my examples with things that you do in your every single day life, okay? So this is very useful, okay? This is something that we actually participate in or with every single day, right? We're readjusting our plans to have different goals. This is it, okay? When somebody has good work ethic is that they do something good and they challenge themselves even more and they get even better at it, right? And they become excellent at something, okay? So in this video, I actually messed up a good 1.5 times where I was supposed to say virtue instead of nature one time, right? But I think it's an obvious mishap where I corrected immediately. I'll later then use that mishap in the lecture, okay? And I am gonna further explain that mishap in the next video, which is gonna be a Plato's Meno video. So between this video and the next video, you're gonna get a ancient Greece series, right? You have Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, okay? And what else? I'm gonna take a walk real quick, show you guys around. This is you'll see in the video that what happens is the opening frames after this, I'm on a rooftop hotel and I actually point at this figure right here and you'll get to see it first, okay? And then when you're watching the video, you will know that we are at that figure. They have like very beautiful bonsais here. I gotta throw in some travel stuff in my videos. They have a good collection of bonsais there. That's where I'm at. Okay, so what else I gotta say? So when you're watching this video, do not get distracted. Don't be hesitant that if you lose your attention by a little bit, hit the pause button and then rewind it a little and then start over again. Well, not start over, but just start where you lost your attention. And keep your stream of thought, okay? It's very important that you keep your stream of thought throughout the whole video and then it's all gonna fall together. It's gonna be glued together in your mind, okay? So the next video, the next frame, I start off is seemingly slow, I would say. It starts out very slow, okay, and it builds up a lot, okay? You are a thinker, okay? You got this, okay? You're gonna go through all this, and then you're gonna reflect on what I said, okay? And then you're gonna be like, huh. Now you got some Aristotle, okay? Now you understand Aristotle, because everybody has a little Aristotle in them, okay? Aristotle was they say that Aristotle was dressed, right, pretty well. And Plato said that he was a little concerned about Aristotle's flashy clothes, okay? But you're gonna see why, because in a way, it's a form of rhetoric, okay? How you're being perceived by people, the way you dress, okay? And also, Aristotle did not have any he didn't have any written books that he gave to the public, okay? It's all from his lecture notes that his students took, and his students put together is how we have Aristotle, okay? So keep that in mind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hit the like button, share it with your friends, and work on yourself. I will help you do that. Okay? Okay, one more thing before we get started is I say in the video that I am gonna do some Immanuel Kant in this video, but by the end of it, I realized that this is gonna be a completely Aristotle video. Okay, so I say I'm gonna put a link to a video of my Immanuel Kant 4 video on the caption, but I don't actually do that, and there is none, because it's just about Aristotle, okay? And ease into the video and give it your attention, okay? And watch it a couple times, okay? Watch all my videos a couple times. It's gonna help you remember it, okay? Today, I'm gonna shoot a video on ethics, and ethics is probably, in a way, the subject that I care about the most in all my studies. And I don't really talk about ethics like ethics, right? It's usually me being ethical, and the topic itself is something that I rarely touch, but I'm gonna try to really get to it today, just for fun. I am here in Vietnam at a place called Da Nang, and I will show you guys around when I get there, right? When I start going through the video. But I'm shooting this video because I am about to shoot these other videos, and I always got my nerves, right? Always got my nerves that I gotta like kind of like ease, right? I can't just like shoot the video just right from the start, right? I gotta like ease myself into it. And what I want to say about this video is it's gonna be pretty I guess clean. We'll see if it's clean. I'll let you guys decide. But it's really just gonna be a review of the Kant 4 lecture, right, on my YouTube channel. So if you want, you could get the YouTube channel. I'll put the link on the caption, right? And then you could I got a little distracted when I was shooting the previous frame. Somebody came up here, well, a few people came up here, and I just kind of shut it off. Had a little chat with them. I went to go eat, took a shower. But then the following frame, is a continuance of it, right? And I don't want to delete it just because. So I'm just trying to smooth it out, right? Transition. I actually want to show y'all this. To the back of me is west, and this is west. So the sun's setting along the mountains in the west, which is kind of like where I'm from, Denver. And back there you'll see, the water you see there is like a mouth of the river. And it kind of goes back along this way into the city, between me and the mountains. It goes all the way down. There's a dragon bridge there, right? There's like 4 bridges. One of them is designed or decorated as a dragon. This is like kind of like north, right? This is north. And that little white figure that you see is the saint or goddess of compassion. Okay, and I mentioned this in the previous video not too long ago, but this is my last day here, and I wanted to at least shoot one video here. Then you got the ocean, right? Along that line right here, you see the palm trees. I would say the water is a little muddy, but it's still a beautiful beach. The sand is soft, which what I care most when I'm going to a beach, right? It's my hotel. So this frame's gonna come back into this video. Again, I'm talking about ethics, and I start giving a little more of introduction type stuff, right? Excuse me. But I get into the video. This is gonna be a pretty heavy, I believe, which is pretty good. It's good for me because I'm trying to get back into me shooting videos, right? And I did want to mention that this Mino video that I'm about to shoot, it can be comparable to when I was in the Netherlands, in Holland. I shot Cont 4 video out there, the Cont 4 video, right? And I remember on my birthday, I must have had it for the month of December. And the day after my birthday, I was like, okay, I'm getting settled in. I already shot like 2 days of video, right? And I feel like I'm gonna settle in a lot quicker for this one. But this is going to be, for me, as a person delivering the lecture, a little harder than the Kant video. And I say that because this is going to be more tied down to something. As when I did the Kant video, I just kind of let it out, right? I just let it go, and I did fine. It's underrated. Watch it. Kant 4. Now, this is going to be the series, well, at least the Mino video. It's very dense, so make sure you heed some attention to it, right? I don't know if I said that right. But anyways, getting back into it. I think in order to talk about ethics, to have the discussion that we need to have, we kind of want to know where this discussion started. And I believe it started in Plato's Meno, or I'm using that as a reference point of our studies in ethics. Okay. In Plato's Meno, he opens up the dialogue with the question, right? The dialogue just starts off with Meno asking a question, right? really, it just starts off, maybe not awkward, but it just starts off like this, right? He says, you know, Mino, it just says Mino, and then he has the two little dots. The following is said by Mino. It says, I'll read one version of it. I actually like the other version. The other version is it's the one I have it on, the one that I'm shooting with. This one's like a little more uncommon, I believe. And Mino asks in this version, it says, translation says, "Can you tell me, Socrates, can virtue be taught, or is it not teachable, but the result of practice, or is it neither of these, but men possess it by nature or in some other way," right? So he's just asking, is nature teachable, or is it from practice, or neither of those, or some other way, virtue, right? And Socrates ends the dialogue without ever getting an answer, right? And I want to say it gets picked up by Aristotle. Okay, Aristotle is the student of Plato, right? Plato was the student of Socrates, right? And I would say one of Plato's virtue was to be around Socrates while he was having these conversations with people about virtue or whatever it is, right? Because Socrates had other students and stuff. But I would say Plato was more like a person that he spent more time with for him to be around to write in the dialogues, right? The characters of the dialogues. That was one of Plato's most valuable virtues, I would say. Okay. It was this timing and being in the right place at the right time. Okay. I would say that, patience is a virtue. And in a way, I think philosophers embody this type of working with, you could say, knowledge, right? Okay, so being in the nature of this being the first video I really shoot this year, since Lunar New Year's, it's really been a while since I really shot any real hardcore philosophy videos, and this is pretty hardcore for just a starting one. But what I was saying, one thing is that when I say I like this translation more, I don't mean the whole translation. I just want to say that this is this little point in this little opening statement. I like the other translation more, right? And I never encountered anything in philosophy where there's two different translations when I like one completely more than the other. Okay, it's just how I value certain things that I look for, right? And I prioritize them and I like them more, right? I also want to say is that just looking back at the video that I've already shot in the previous frames, that I'm making it kind of fuzzy, right? I'm talking about ethics, and then I'm talking about virtue, right? And again, this whole video is going to be about ethics, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning Plato, Socrates, Aristotle is because virtue is a type of ethics, and it's called virtue ethics, okay? I want to get that straight. So we're talking about ethics in general, right? We're going to go through ethics in general. But when I talk about Plato's Meno, I'm saying it's a discussion of virtue, okay? Virtue is you could say a type of ethics, okay? And we're going to get through a lot of this today. All right, so this whole video, I'm just trying to familiarize everybody with the topics that are coming up in all my lectures. Okay, we're gonna talk about Plato's Meno and then Kant, and this is gonna like kind of encompass all that, and it's just a familiarizing video. Okay, and we talk about ethics, which is really important. As I said, I study, I would say, a lot of ethics, no, a lot of metaphysics, right? Just so I could get to the crux, right? The crux of my just everyday dealings in life, right? Trying to get to where all these things meet. And the discussion of virtue has a little grounding aspect of philosophy as compared to metaphysics. Okay. All right, I apologize for switching it up again. This is about 2 weeks after I shot the last frame. Here we're down by the beach, right? And I had time to think about over the last 2 weeks what I wanted to say in this video. And I got a lot of things to say before it finishes. But I've been trying to find a quiet spot I could shoot a video, and this is not really quiet. I got the beach behind me, and I got the coastal road in front of me. But the timing on this is very important, right? I am shooting something that I'm pretty much just shoot once, you know? And I put a lot of pressure on me. The reason why I came out here is because I wanted to shoot a video. Because I feel like I do it better when I'm overseas than when I'm at home. Because I get in like my mind is just less distracted. But I'm actually distracted out here. One thing that I focus on when I do a video is the delivery, right? I always try to do a good delivery. I sat in 4,000 hours of lecture, so I want to deliver a lecture where I have people's attention. It's not the easiest thing, and I feel like I do pretty well at it. As you know, I'm always comparing myself to the teachers, right? Sometimes I could deliver a lot in a video without cutting off the frame, right? A lot of times my videos are stitched together where it's just a bunch of frames, and this is going to be one of them. But you know, there's sometimes that y'all seen that I just start a video and I just go off and I don't stitch together. And I'll probably be like that with the Kant videos. But for now, I am just getting started, okay? And since then, since I was at the hotel at the roof pool, I've been really just trying to cut out a lot of stuff from this video and just try to get straight to the point, right? And I just been thinking I was gonna shoot a whole nother video, but I didn't want to scrap the beginning of this. But this video is more or less, or I don't want to say that again, is pretty much focused on two philosophers, Aristotle and Kant, okay? Those are the two we're gonna really deal with today. And I'm gonna start with Aristotle's virtue ethics. And I'm gonna try to give you like a broad general discussion of Aristotle. Okay. I've actually shot a couple Aristotle videos on my Facebook, and if you look up on my search, you just say Aristotle videos by me, there should be at least 2, but I think there's like 3 or 4 Aristotle videos on my Facebook, right? But all those videos, I pretty much said the same thing in a way, where I talked about how there's an order of things, right? And there's a larger order of things, and there's a smaller order of things, right? And my favorite example that I ever learned with Aristotle was the way the universe is ordered. There's just larger orders, right? And the largest order, at least when it comes to the cosmos, right, the universe, Aristotle is going to say it's the galactical sphere, right? The galactical sphere is when you look up at night and you see the stars, right? That is like the sphere that encompasses all other spheres, right? He said that was the furthest sphere. And then he said there was the solar sphere, right? The sun sphere, which is not as far as the galactical sphere, but it is closer, right? And below the solar sphere, the sun sphere, is the lunar sphere, right? The moon is even closer, right? And everything below the moon. And then we are in the sublunar sphere, right? He even had something about things rising up through the ether, right? Aristotle. And the word that I used in my last videos, I called it teleology, right? Teleology is the way that we order things, okay? And there's certain orders of the universe, right? And Aristotle, he talks about certain subjects, right? And these subjects have, I guess you could say, a relation to the other subjects, right? And he's going to say that political science is the highest science, right? And we're going to look at that in a way when we talk about virtue. I want to argue with what we just said, that for you to be a good politician, right, if we're talking about political science is the highest science, a politician should understand the nature of the galactical sphere, right? Or the planets go on their own sphere too, right? They're further than the sun and closer than the galactical sphere, right? The politician is in charge of, when it comes to politics. I'm saying you need to know the galactical sphere, but when it comes to politics, right, it goes from things like who is knowledgeable and able to execute, right, to facilitate, right? The word emperor means to facilitate, the empire, an empire, right? Who can facilitate the best, right? Who's the best emperor, right? But their domain is the metro, right? Metropolis, right? The Greek word for city, right? Polis is city. And within that, right, that is a high order of the political science. You have things like industry, somebody who knows the industry, which is within the metro, right? And then you got the family, right, which is within the industry, right? And then you got the individual, which is inside the family, right? We're going this whole teleological ordering of how we order things, right? So I want to focus on what I'm about to say right here, right? On what ethics is. My first shot at it, okay? We have this whole idea of teleology, and at the end of it, right, you have the individual, right? And I want to say to the point, one of my first statements about ethics that I ever shot on video is, what was I saying? The realm of morality it extends beyond yourself, right? The realm of morality extends beyond yourself. Okay, I'm gonna say it a third time. The realm of morality extends beyond yourself, okay? And I want you to recognize that, right? The realm of morality. And then we're gonna look back into ourselves, okay? And the way Aristotle does it, right? What I'm doing here is that he's gonna say that people follow their feelings, right? And that is something an animal does. They follow their feelings. And he's saying that humans are a little different from animals, but we do have the animal aspect, right? My favorite term that they use to describe this is they can't help themselves, right? Think about that term. This person is addicted to drugs. They can't help themselves, right? There's no way that they can't get out of their feelings, right? Kind of like an animal. An animal always follows its feelings. Always, 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 right? It eats, it sleeps, it shits, it has sex, right? That's an animal. And it can't get out of its feelings. It can't help itself, right? It doesn't have a choice to do what it does. But humans have a choice, okay? And Aristotle, he says the life of feelings is one aspect, right? Your pleasure, right? And then there's another aspect. He has three aspects of life. One is the animal aspect, the other is the political life, right? And the other is the contemplative life. And we have to get into those three when we talk about virtue ethics, okay? And even teleology. But, you know, I've just been trying to familiarize people because I never really did a virtue ethics lecture, right? And I do want to point out a couple things just about my delivery here, okay? My lecture notes, especially when they're cut up like this, is me shooting the video. I don't have nothing written, okay? I do want to say the only time that I ever wrote notes to do a delivery on a lecture was the Cont 4. But it wasn't notes that I had, right? I wrote them, and then within an hour or two, a couple hours, before that night was over, I would say it, right? I was just writing notes at that time, but they weren't like lecture notes that I saved up. But that's the only time I ever used notes. And I didn't like, it was just the way I explained it. And these are like my lecture notes, right? Like, I personally watch all these videos again, and if I could watch it and shoot another one just to summarize it, I'd do a lot better, right? And that's just like part of my virtue, okay? See, I'm just talking about stuff about our mind, right? And it's kind of vague, right? But sometimes it's even confusing, right? But as a philosopher, right, you're supposed to like tie it together, right? Tie all this together and hold on to it and have retention, right? That's me, what I did in school, right? And I'm trying to tell people very important stuff, right? That is what I value, okay? I don't think if anyone else could do it, I don't think anyone could do it besides me, at least to the degree that I could do it, right? Me telling you this part, I think is one of those things where it doesn't make sense now, but it's gonna make sense later, okay? So I'm gonna go back into the lecture, okay? I was saying there's three parts of life that Aristotle talked about. One was the contemplative life, the other was the political life, and the third was the life of bodily pleasures, okay? And what I said about the life of bodily pleasures is it's just mere gratification. We're gonna get that later with Kant. I think that's a really good way to explain it, right? The Kantian terms, mere gratification. Animals merely gratify themselves, right? Humans have something else. Humans have a contemplation, and the contemplation enables us to do things, you could say, just for the simplicity of this lecture, against nature, right? The nature of your own gratification, right? Gratification is something you can't help, but when you refrain from it, right? That's the word that Aristotle uses. Refrain from your gratification. You could give yourself like an option, right? Do you want to continue with your gratification, or do you want to go a different route to gratify yourself, right? In a way, you could go against the more pleasurable things, which an animal can't do, right? An animal can't go against their own pleasure, okay? All right, so getting back into the lecture, it seems like I'm like going off tangents, but I think everything is going to come back and connect itself if you pay close enough attention. Okay, getting back to Aristotle now, we're really going to get to the crux of everything. Okay, this was a couple hundred years BC, and the thought of it still, I use these to be ethical, right? These ideas, I don't use these ideas, but it represents a lot of things that we all do every single day. Okay, Aristotle says there's three parts of life, and he says they're the contemplative part, the political part, and the part of bodily pleasures, right? And I went through this whole thing about how the animals have no choice or aren't able to help themselves, right? And humans kind of differ because we have a contemplative part, right? We could refrain from our bodily pleasures, right? I could be out drinking or something right now, but I'm not, right? I'm refraining. Maybe I find this as a pleasure, but I have a choice, right? I have a choice to do neither of them, right? It's because the way I've ordered my life and its teleology, I'm here shooting this video because it's a choice, okay? The political life, right, has to do with how you want to deal with people in the world, right? And that has to do with some type of contemplative setup too, right? The political life actually doesn't end in your death, right? You're gonna have people talk about you when you're gone, maybe, right? Was this person honorable or was he not honorable? And the word Aristotle says in a phrase is your honor could be given or taken away from you easily, right? Or it doesn't depend on you whatsoever, your political life, right? You don't have to be here, so it doesn't have to deal with your feelings when you're not here, right? But the way you approach it, right, your political approach, you contemplated it perhaps, and you try to execute it in a certain way, right? That is the way you contemplated your teleology and the way you executed it, right? if you're trying to do whatever political. But then again, it hands down through the other subjects, right? Whether it's your work, if you're a mechanic, the way you have your family, right? You could say the contemplative life is what makes something great, right? The way you contemplated it and executed it, right? And some things are greater than others, right? Through your contemplation, you should at least recognize that within yourself, right? So I said a little bit in all three of these subjects, right? The contemplative life, the political life, and the life of bodily pleasures. And now I just want to get into virtue ethics itself, right? And what virtue ethics is focused on a mean, right? A mean, you could say an average, right? You could say there's too much of a thing, and too much of a thing's not always good for you, right? Or not enough of a thing is also not good for you, right? So you need the right amount of anything, right? And that would be your mean. And when you're at your mean, you're being virtuous, okay? And of course, to Aristotle. Now I have a really good example to explain too much of a good thing or too much of something that's not necessarily good for you, okay? So at the beginning of this video, when I shot the first few frames, I was at a hotel, right? And what I did was I read off the beginning of Plato's Meno, okay? And the beginning of Plato's Meno started with that whole thing about Meno asking Socrates a question, right? He asks Socrates, what is virtue, right? Is it taught? Is it practiced? Or does it come in some other way? Or is it by nature, right? And that's what Meno said. And then immediately after that, I mixed up the word virtue with nature. I said, is nature taught? Is it practiced, right? Or some other way, right? I totally messed it up, but not structurally as of yet. What happened was, in a way, I didn't deliver that well because I got the words mixed up, right? And I want to say, when you look at what happened and the way I explain it, right, it has a lot to do with this contemplative understanding of my very own virtue, right? I said that I'm not that much of a reader either, but I have listened to this Plato's Meno audiobook. I pressed play on the opening statement roughly 300 times. So it's something that I heard more than anything else in philosophy. That very opening statement, right, of Plato's Meno. I've heard that more than anything else, right? And all that time, when I first talk about it, I just barely give any thought to it, right? I say, is nature taught or practiced? When it's supposed to be, is virtue taught or practiced? And that's the very opening statement of something that I listened to 300 times, right? That is some type of oversaturation in my mental capacities, okay? And I want to point that out. It's, again, it's another tangent, but it will all kind of like come together, okay? This is gonna be a really heavy video, right? We're really gonna turn it up a notch right now with this Aristotle and then this Kant, okay? All right, so I think of recently, I've always challenged my viewers whenever I shot a video, and this one is probably going to be the most challenging video since the Kant 4 video. Okay, and that was 2 years ago. So this is a real hard challenge. Okay, I'm gonna throw in some more layers, and I need y'all to kind of integrate it into your mental capacities as well. Okay, I'm gonna revisit this idea of contemplative life, or the contemplative part of life, right? And I'm gonna throw in more ideas. And the first idea is this idea of friendship, right? And he says that friendships need to be reciprocated, right? Someone has to show something, and someone has to acknowledge it, and they kind of have to have some type of agreement in some sort of way, right? And that's like some type of political friendship or something, right? And he says that friends, in a way, stay friends contemplatively, right? So this whole idea of the out of sight, out of mind thing is saying that if you are out of sight and out of mind, then you're not really a friend, right? Because your true friends stay with you even when they're out of sight, okay? And that's like a contemplative friendship, right? And I did want to throw in that layer with Aristotle, okay? Another layer with Aristotle that I want to throw in is he talks about in his politics, right? He talks about the rational person and a slave and a person that's sleeping, right, in the vegetative state, right? Those three you could say times of life, right? Some people are rational, right? And the rational person tells a slave what to do, right? And he's just saying that this is what's going on, and he's not saying that a slave cannot switch positions and tell a master what to do, right? He's just talking about how he sees things, right, in terms of relationships, right? Whoever's giving the order is rational, whoever takes the order is a slave, right? That's all he's saying. And a lot of times Aristotle is villainized, right? And he is saying things like that are more empirical, right? This is another layer, but when you set up the teleology, you should be able to see something resembling this, right? And he's saying something misogynistic, right? I am trying to say it in a nice way, right? But this is Aristotle, right? This is what he said, and what he was saying is not necessarily, I guess it's projective, right? But what he says about women, or how, you know, things are seen in nature, is that there's a difference between women and men, right? He says that women are half-baked men, okay? And the way he says it is that, you know, guys have a seed, right? Your sperm, right? And the guy plants the seed in an incubator, right? Or a womb, right? In a woman, right? And then 9 months later, a baby comes out, right? And then he looks at the baby, right? He looks at the baby, and if the baby has a penis, then it could plant seeds. And if it doesn't, then it's an incubator, right? It's a womb, right? So he's saying that women are half-baked men, okay? And he is taking, I guess you could say, in a visual approach, right? He knows that the semen when in a womb incubates a baby, right? And he's just saying that the babies that come out, if they don't have a penis, then they're half-baked, right? In a way. He probably says something else, but that's the way I always heard it in philosophy, okay? And everybody knows, everybody into philosophy and Aristotle will notice by Aristotle, right? Women are walking wombs, okay? And just another side note, I can remember 3 female teachers teaching me this. So to try to wrap up Aristotle, I'm just gonna get to his virtue ethics. And what I wanna say is, if we remember, when we go back to the life of bodily pleasures, we're saying that animals don't really have a choice to do what they do, right? They're always going to choose what their feelings tell them, right? They're not going to discuss it with anybody like how humans can, right? Aristotle says the way you find your virtue is that at first you have to abstain from your physical pleasures, right? Your bodily pleasures. You have to abstain from it, right? This is a lot of times drug counselors use this Aristotle thing to get people off of drugs, right? They say that you're being an animal, right? With your drug habits. And you're more than an animal, you're actually a human being, okay? You have a contemplative life and a political life, right? You don't want to be a druggie. You gotta hide that you're a druggie, and that kind of says something about the nature of your substance abuse or whatever it is. You like to eat too much. You like to whatever it is, right? One of your gratifications that you've habitually done and you're not happy with, and you want to kind of at least be able to disconnect your feelings from it for you to find your virtue, right? And again, you're going to have to be able to abstain from your physical pleasures, right? And when you abstain, when you refuse, or when you don't buy into or don't allow yourself to adhere to those sensations, you could find yourself at a contemplative moment where you could say your mind is over the matter, right? You have reposed your will from participating in the very thing that you're trying to change, right? So once you do that, right, Aristotle says that is not enough, right? So if you're addicted to alcohol, right, and you're out drinking, and you always drink every single day, right, and you get thrown in jail, right, Aristotle would say that you're not finding your virtue because simply you can't get a hold of alcohol because you're in jail. Aristotle would say your virtue, when you find your virtue, is that when it's there in front of you and you refuse it because you don't want to, rather than you refuse it because you don't have access to it, that is, you're becoming virtuous, right? This is where you find your moderation, right? So Aristotle's going to say that anyone who is absent of their vices, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are being virtuous, right? They gotta be able to be in front of it and willfully be able to deny it, right? And he even says that everybody has their own virtue. If you don't ever participate in that vice again, or whatever it is, then you're not necessarily being virtuous either, right? You got to know what is right for you. But before you know what's right for you, you're going to have to be able to separate yourself from it, right? This leads us to a discussion of habits, right? And he would say that you want to have good habits, right? But virtue in general is like, I'm going to use the idea of archery, right? Archery as in a bow and arrow, right? You have a distance that's 4, right? You have a target that's 4 away from you. You kind of got to tilt it up, right? It's going to go up and then down, right? You got to put that into your mental account of how the trajectory of the arrow is going to hit, right? So you pull back so hard, but you kind of tilt it up, but you pull it back too hard and you let it go, it's going to go over the target, right? And if you pull back not hard enough and you're still tilted and you let it go, but you didn't pull it back enough, it falls short of the target, right? Aristotle is going to say that on both of those occasions, when you overpower it or when you underpower it, you're short of the means, right? You're short of the target, right? Anything outside your target, you are off, right? Your virtue, you could say, or your means, right? If I ever do another Aristotle video, which I do want to do, just by himself, I will get into a lot more other stuff, but this is gonna have to do. Okay. So, regardless if it's more or less, it's still a deficiency from the me, right? It's still, you could say, a vice, right? One of the most famous, I would say, yeah, one of the most famous, but one of the ones that I can explain decently is the virtue of courage, right? Courage is a type of virtue, right? And let's say you are a member of the Athenian hoplites, right? That Socrates was in. You are in a phalanx, right? Which is how soldiers line up, right? And work as a unit in the army or the military, right? It's called a phalanx, right? And the virtue that we are focusing on is courage. And when it comes to courage, there is a certain amount of courage that is needed, right? And you could be overly courageous, right? And the terms that you use for that is brash, or you're too brazen, right? You're brazen or you're brash, right? So here everybody's lined up in the phalanx and you're at war, right? Yeah, you're trying to summon up your courage, but then you actually summon up too much courage, and then before the war or before your phalanx is even supposed to attack, you jump off the line and go attack, and then they kill you, right? And then now your whole phalanx is corrupted because of your position is gone, right? And they say stuff like, a loose cannon will sink the whole ship, right? That's the perfect example, right? Too brash or too brazen when it comes to the courage of virtue, right? And let's just say what a deficiency is, right? You're at war. Your phalanx, it's time for your phalanx, somebody hit the drum or whatever it is. They signaled you to attack, right? But then you all of a sudden climb into your shell and your whole phalanx has just left you. And you get left behind and they need you to fulfill a position in the phalanx and you missed it, and then now your phalanx loses the battle or whatever, right? That is too cowardice, right? So courage, there's the right amount of courage, there's too much courage, and there's not enough courage, right? And some people were warriors, and it's because their courage was virtuous, right? So to wrap all this up, right, I want to say that virtue is being able to abstain from your physical pleasures and contemplatively order your life, right? Order what you do at work or your family or whatever it is, right? You gotta be able to order. You gotta understand the order of things for you to facilitate the things that you want to do, to what degrees, right? And I'm saying that everybody has a different path of virtue when they're born, right? And we are placed inside a world where we have to deal with things and we have to do them correctly, or we at least try, and a lot of times we fail. So I want to mention that we have such things as a failure, right? Or you could call it like a vice. Okay, so this is a couple days after the last frame that I shot, and what happened was somebody came up and interrupted me. But I think this is the final day of shooting. So the first day was on top of the rooftop pool. The second day was everything between that and now. And what I was saying about in the last frame before I got interrupted was everybody has their own virtue, right? And if you're not hitting your virtue, you're in a realm of vices or vice, okay? So I want to get into, again, just to make sure that we're grounded in virtue, okay? Everything that we do, that we try, has a aspect of failure to it, right? Since you're born, right? When you start developing your teleology of what you want to do, your whole plan in life, you kind of have to have some type of work ethic where you attempt something and you fail and try again, right? And these can be chopped up into smaller tasks, right? There's a major goal that you have in life, but it's going to take a lot of steps to get there, right? And you could say that you order your everyday life, right? Every day there's like, you adjust your plan in life, right? Everybody I would say in some degrees participates in this, right? And with this video, you kind of get more of how to examine this a little better, right? Through some type of reflection, okay? Okay, so there was Socrates, right? And Socrates runs into a conversation with this guy named Meno. And the conversation is, what is virtue, right? And Aristotle says that nothing is by accident, right? Everything is done through by habit, right? Nothing is done in accident. Everything is done through by habit, right? Excellence is done through by habit. You can't just do something and have excellence, right? If you work and make $1 million, that's excellence, right? If you hit a lottery and win $1 million, that is luck, right? He's drawing a distinction here, right? But when we look at Aristotle, at his position in the world, right, he's saying that he did a lot of practice for him to be virtuous as a philosopher, right? I want to point out that when we look at Plato and Socrates and Meno, I would say that it was like an accident, right? Or it was unintentional that Aristotle was going to use this to have his virtue, right? Something that he worked on fixing for his previous professors, right? Teachers. So another way I'm going to describe this is as luck, right? Not necessarily an accident, but by luck, right? It was just a fluke that Socrates was capable of having these conversations, right? I don't think when he was born he intended to be the person that he was, right? So in a way, it was luck, okay? One thing about Aristotle is that he says that for you to be truly successful, you're gonna have to have some type of luck in one way or the other, right? Let's just say some people are born with a higher capacity to hold air in their lungs, right? And these people go on to be Olympic swimmers, right? And they win all these gold medals because they had a higher lung capacity to breathe, right? And in a way, perhaps they found something for them to follow, like maybe even naively, but because it was something they were good at, right? Me, I always had the right teachers, right? And I feel like for the discussion of virtue, I had the right teachers to teach me stuff for me to deliver a virtue lecture. And I think Socrates had a teacher that was female. And I just recently read of an article that says that when Western civilization became Christian, they tried to erase all the sages and teachers and goddesses from the history books, right? And I'm not surprised, but without knowing what was taught, right, to Socrates, who dedicated his whole life for finding the truth, trying to find the truth, and Plato being around him and Aristotle being around him, there is something that has been developing, right, through all of history that you can inherit, right, and you could work on it and make it better. Okay, this is something bigger than, you know, these individual philosophers, where Aristotle picks up the work of Plato and Socrates, and he kind of takes this idea of virtue to an end, right, to a termination, to its limit, okay? So to end this video, I want to talk about Aristotle's metaphysics a little bit, okay? And it also has, you know, other things like rhetoric and poetry. And I have mentioned these in my previous Aristotle videos, but I have not mentioned it yet in this video, so I'm going to end it with this one. But I want to bring in the idea that political science is the highest science, okay? Metaphors are energy packets, right? Like our words are energy packets, right? They're like letters that we've written down, right? And I could give it to somebody and they could read it, right? And they're getting something from it, right? It's something that's transposed, right? It has to do with an audience, okay? So metaphors are composition of, you could say, power, right? Four is meta, and four is power packets, or meta is like energy in this sense, right? Energy packets. That's the Greek etymology, I believe. But we use these metaphors as rhetoricians, right? In a way, rhetoric, the word rhetoric has some type of negative connotation, right? But I want to say that everybody uses some type of rhetoric, right, when they speak, because they have at least some type of interpretation of how the viewers or the audience is going to view their message, right? So you're using these energy packets that transpose us, right? It absorbs and exfoliates, right? To say simply, it's like a vehicle that goes off combustion, right? It uses a fuel and it exfoliates some type of discharge, right? And our words are similar to that, right? I put these words together, and perhaps when it hits you, you do something with it, right? It's kind of like exfoliating you, right? It's kind of like, sometimes you could say I'm making you flourish, okay? When we understand rhetoric and this idea that political science is the highest science, you want to find someone with a virtue that can use a type of rhetoric that can facilitate more flourishing, right? That should be for the politician or perhaps a philosopher, right? But regardless, we want to flourish as a highest order of things, okay? Let's look at this as our vices, as is what is keeping us from flourishing, right? And Aristotle has the word eudaimonia, right? eudaimonia, eudaimonia, which means flourishing, right? You want to have people flourish, right? When you execute anything with excellence, that is flourishing, okay? When you look at political science as the high science, you want to look at who has the type of excellence to make all of society flourish, right? All right, so we're heading on to the last frame of the video, I believe. And I want to bring back one more thing, all right? And this is with the rhetoric in mind, okay? Aristotle has been villainized, or he is a misogynist, right? You could say that. Or either way, right? But the way society is ordered politically, there is the people that are marginalized, right? The people that aren't capable to have their voices heard, right? But in terms of things like feminist studies, right? And the structure of patriarchy. It's laid out the way the rhetoric is laid out in society, the way it is, right? There's no denying that, okay? And I'm not against anyone's virtue. I'm not going against anyone's virtue in society if they are marginalized and want their voice spoken, right? I'm not. But what they got to deal with, right? Anybody in any society, in this society, they're dealing with this rhetoric, right? And this composition of metaphors, this paperwork, this legislative branch, right? This phenomena around the whole world, right? And we could say there's a lot of things that maintain our vices in society inside this rhetoric, right? And this is something that we got to notice. And this is something that is really just laying there. You could say decaying in a way, right? That's the way I see it, right? And this is what you see, this is what you get with Aristotle, right? And I apologize. I don't think decaying is probably not the best word, but the way the rhetoric is in society keeps us stagnant, right? From flourishing. And there's things that could be shifted around, transposed for all of humanity, right? A moral standpoint for all of us to flourish better, right? But when the people who have control of the rhetoric keeps it away to a degree that it's senseless and causing nothing but pain, is pretty immoral, right? Again, I'm going back to morality, because it has to do with something outside of your own gratification, right? What do you want to do politically with honor? Okay. The very last thing I'm going to say is there's rhetoric and there's poetry, right? It has the same concept of using metaphors, right? Poetry is not necessarily intended for our audience, intentional as a person wanting to get someone to do something for them. It's more of the flourishing, the independent flourishing that people's virtue reconnect to in a term of performing happiness, right? So happiness is its own ultimate nature, right? And we have access to it. And I'm just saying that, you know, in terms of Aristotle, eudaimonia and the nature of happiness is actually the greatest form of anything, right? Okay, I think that's it. I had a little trouble at the end because like I had to manually put in all the videos, but I think we did pretty good. I could have just threw some more stuff in there, but I didn't. But I've decided that this is only going to be an Aristotle video. I was going to throw a Kant lecture on this, but this is a standalone. I hope you enjoyed it. This is a video that's going to make anyone who watches it better, unless you've been, you know, hammering yourself with an Aristotle lecture, which no one in the world has really been doing. This is going to help everybody. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button. Share it with your friends. Tell them your friend's a philosopher. He is talking about virtue and it helped you out in life, because I think this will, okay?